Let's talk about this book.
Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and today we are reviewing a big expected book, which is Isles of the Emberdark by Brandon Sanderson. So yeah, this week we are welcoming back one of the biggest names in fantasy history, which is Brandon Sanderson. This book was a special edition coming from the backer kit of Words of Radiance, the leather-bound edition, and it is quite hard to describe this book in terms of subgenres because there is so much mixed into it, which I'll get into it in the proper review. But let me just start off by saying that there will be spoilers for everything Cosmere related. And what is Cosmere, you're asking me? Well, Cosmere is the equivalent of the MCU or Discworld. Discworld by Terry Pratchett, MCU Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is basically a universe where several stories happen concurrently. So we have several series for Brandon Sanderson. Each series is kind of set in a different solar system, and all of them within the same universe. This book in specific, Isles of the Emberdark, comes from a short story that Brandon Sanderson had published previously called Sixth of the Dusk, that has been available for quite a while, but he basically picked that story, added a ton into it, remodeled some parts of the story to create this novel. This book was published this year, actually, just a couple months ago, but of course, in true Brandon Sanderson fashion, on Goodreads, this book already has more than 14,000 ratings, with an impressive score of 4.56 out of 5, which is very impressive not only in terms of fantasy, but as you'll see as we go through the review, also even more impressive in terms of science fiction. Moving on to our housekeeping item, which is the synopsis. I'm going to narrate the synopsis for you, just so you can get an idea of what this book is about. If you don't want to listen to anything at all because of spoilers, then you can skip into the next timestamp. It will just guide you directly into the review. Alright, I hope I've given you enough seconds to do that. Let's get on with it. All his life, Sixth of the Dusk has been a traditional trapper of Avia, the supernatural birds his people bond with, on the deadly island of Pachi. Then, one fateful night, he propels his people into a race to modernize before they can be conquered by the ones above, invaders from the stars who want to exploit the AVR. But it's a race they're losing, and Dusk fears his people will lose themselves in the effort. When a chance comes to sail into the expanse of the Emberdark beyond the mystical portal, Dusk sets off to find his people's salvation with only a canoe, his birds, and all the grit and canniness of a patchy trapper. Elsewhere, in the Emberdark, is a young dragon chained in human form, starling of the starship Dynamic. She and her ragtag crew of exiles are deep in debt and on the brink of losing their freedom. So when she finds an ancient map to a hidden portal between the Emberdark and the physical realm, she seizes the chance at a lucrative discovery. These unlikely allies might just be the solution to each other's crisis. In their search for independence, Dusk and Starling face perilous bargains, poisonous politics, and the destructive echo of a dead god. Alright, with that out of the way, and since this is a standalone book without previous scores to look at, we don't need to do that, and we can jump right into the review, starting with plot. So this book is split into two parts. The first one, which is pretty much the short story Sixth of the Dusk with some adjustments, and also another plot line added to it, which is the present time, and it transforms the short story Sixth of the Dusk into a flashback of stuff that happened before the events of the book. And then we have the second part, which is full-blown Cosmere Central. I mean, even the first part is set in a time where there is crossover between the worlds of Brandon Sanderson. We see the Scandrians are almost invading, not really invading, but they're there, they have spaceships, we know where they come from, and they are interacting with this other world. Whereas the second part, it's like many years ahead of any series that I've read so far, Brandon Sanderson, and it's clearly like a full epic scene that is about to happen. And this to say, and I'll repeat this many times, this is not at all the first book you should read from Brandon Sanderson. Not even the second or the third or the fifth. I think this is one after you've read many of his works and you understand a lot of the interactions that are happening. But the plot between these two parts is quite different. I enjoy both of them. I have to say I enjoyed the first part more because I just liked the exploring of this new world and Six of the Dusk and his conflict with himself and with the world and what's happening. Whereas the second one, because it was so mind-blowing with all that was happening in terms of Cosmere, it was still enjoyable, but I don't think I enjoyed the plot as much. And I mean, that's partially because it was so left field. I was not expecting whatsoever for this to happen to this level of the Cosmere, that I was taken a bit aback and my expectations had to shift a bit to understand fully where we were going. And the plot is quite simple. I mean, it's not something that will blow your mind with plot twists and everything, but it is fun. It is a good plot whatsoever, and I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Okay, and what about characters? I mean, Six of the Dusk suffered a huge improvement in this book, in this new iteration of the short story. He suddenly became a symbol of decay of his profession, his civilization overall, and I think that's a great problem for a character to have. I mean, what do you make of yourself when your role starts becoming obsolete and technology is advancing so much that you're no longer useful for anyone, pretty much. I mean, I think Brandon Sanderson creates existential problems like no one else can. Then you have the ensemble on the second part of the book, which is what's giving me Firefly vibes. It was, I don't know if Brandon Sanderson got inspired by that, but it definitely felt like it. I mean, every character is unique with its own properties, let's say, and Starling, our main protagonist of that trip, that crew, is very a hero to be, and you can totally see where she's gonna end up, but it's still very enjoyable to see her ride. If I only had to pick on something about this category, would be the people on the first part in the avian world, AVR I mean, it's just they weren't as developed as everyone else in the second part. Even the troops in the second part felt okay that they were copying stereotypes and tropes, but I think they were done well. They were very well done tropes, and I mean the tropes exist for a reason, so I think that was done. The first part not so much, but then again, first part is smaller than the second one. So for this category, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 too. In our world building, again, this has to be split in two parts for this book, because in the first part we have a very typical Brandon Sanderson style. We get not a full explanation, but we get to explore a new magic system, kinda. We get to explore new world, new peoples, new culture. And then we have the second part, which is, again, Cosmere, full-blown level of world building. This is not world building anymore, this is universe building at this point. And this is the daunting level, because don't get me wrong, it's very well done, it makes complete sense in true Brandon Sanderson fashion, but reading this part, it's like you are suddenly aware that you live in a planet and that planet is just blasting through space in the midst of nothingness. It's that level of mind-blowing. And it's just one of those shattering truths that completely changes the way you look at things. And I mean, the complexity of the consequences of this novel barely scratches the surface of what's about to happen. Because I mean, I could just imagine the million possibilities of what could happen just due to the events in this book, but also what happened before, what's going to happen now. But aside from that, I loved all the different peoples that Brandon Sanderson references, some nods to some of the series that have been already out, some others that I haven't ever read. I don't know if it's part of one of the books that I haven't read yet from Brandon Sanderson, but still made me super curious. Everything looks pretty coherent with everything, so I'm gonna give a 5 out of 5 for this category. And I mean, just gonna say, the Emberdark is a can of worms with the amount of monsters that exist there, why they're like that, and what is their purpose, how they were created, all of that. There's just so many questions. And what about writing style? Let me start by talking about the big theme of this book, which is obsoleteness, if that even exists, and the progress of a civilization. It gave me a lot of Lord of the Rings vibe in the best way possible. And what I mean by this is that in Lord of the Rings, magic is decaying, progress is advancing, and technology in some way is overtaking magic. And I mean, this has been done several times through fantasy. It's not a new thing. However, Brandon Sanderson picks this trope or this concept and changes it just slightly so that magic is not being lost, magic is being industrialized. At the same time as some people are losing their capacities and their usefulness. I think this is the fresh perspective that hasn't been done much before. And at the same time, Brandon Sanderson is capable of interweaving a fantasy realm with the science fiction one to create this mix of the two things, almost as if you're in two different dimensions at the same time. But I mean, this is very fit for where the story takes us, and as we progress more into the Cosmere, it will be even more and more like this. As for the prose and pacing, that is very typical Brandon Sanderson. You can expect much of what you already had if you've read Brandon Sanderson before. Simple, direct prose, great action. It's not too simple, it gives you just enough to have a complete image of everything that is happening. And the pacing, again, good, highs and lows. We have a bit of a Sanderlanche at the end, which is expected, although this one wasn't as big, but then again, I don't think this book was supposed to have an ending as epic as some others in his world. So for this category, it's going to be a 5 out of 5 for me. And our last category is enjoyment. And I think this one is funny because I could totally see myself not enjoying this book at all, if this was my first Brandon Sanderson book, that is. But having read so many of Brandon Sanderson's works, I mean, you have some here, some in another bookshelf, but I've read plenty of them, and so it was thoroughly enjoyable to read this. And at the start, I was enjoying it because we were revisiting a world that suddenly had changed just slightly, but had a very good part of plot and characters and world building. But I mean, once we got to the second part, my mouth was just agape more and more as all the information kept getting fed to me, and I was just like, okay, I want to know more of this. Even though the plot is not amazing, or the characters might not be just as complex as they are usually, everything is just so amazing, so mind-blowing that I just want to keep reading. So for this category, it has to be a 5 out of 5. I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. And so we reached the end of our review. Just as a refresher, we have 4 for plot, 4 for characters, and then 5 for world building, writing style, and enjoyment. And that gives us a final score of 4.6 out of 5. It's a great score for a standalone book of Brandon Sanderson's. I mean, when you read Brandon Sanderson, you always expect great scores, and it's not too far off from the Goodreads one, which was 4.56. So I guess I'm thinking very similarly to the average person on Goodreads. But I must reiterate, this is not the first book of Brandon Sanderson that you should read whatsoever. Go read Mistborn, go read Warbreaker, go read Elantris even. Just not this one. This one, leave it for much later. You'll enjoy it still, and I think you'll enjoy it even more because you've read all the other books before. And if you've read already a lot of the books of Brandon Sanderson, definitely go read this because your mind will be blown with everything that happens. But yeah, if you've read it already, let me know. Comment down below, what did you think of this? Did you enjoy it, or did you think that it was just a level that for you it's getting too much, or not enough at all? Comment down below and let me know. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and you shall be seeing me on Thursdays and Sundays, okay? See you soon!